some people were still clinging on to the idea that he could stick around because he presented to Keith Pelly that we got really close at Game 7 of the second round, and we are.
How many times are you permitted to say that?
We are right there, and if there's a little bit more tweaking, if you allow me to do that tweaking, I can stick around and get this team over the hump. And obviously, Keith Pelly decided against that.
You just don't get to say that the same way the Oilers a couple of years ago get to say that, right?
Or last year.
Or well,
they almost won.
Like, okay, so there was, you could argue a time where the Oilers were in a position where they're like, I don't know, should we shake this up a bit? And 2022, they make it to the Final Four, and they're very happy about that. And they get swept, and no one's happy about that. See what's happening in Carolina right now. And then the next year, you put together that effort against Vegas. But it wasn't 9 consecutive years of disappointment. So they were able to ride that into, you know what, let's keep it together. Let's see how this goes. Let's maybe add a couple pieces to it. They go to the Stanley Cup final, and no one's blowing up a team that goes to the Stanley Cup final. Now here's the Leafs.
So their statement yesterday, I don't know, Adam, if you want to read it.
Over the past 11 seasons, Brendan Shanahan has made countless contributions to the Toronto Maple Leafs on the ice and off the ice in the community. Brendan is one of the most respected leaders in the game, and he has instilled many of the traits that were the signature of his Hall of Fame career throughout the organization, uniting this storied franchise in the honor, pride, and courage that it was founded on. Our responsibility and driving motivation, however, is to add a new chapter to the Maple Leafs championship history, and it was determined that a new voice was required to take the team to the next level in the years ahead. The franchise will be forever grateful to for Brendan's contributions and wish him and his family every success and happiness in the future. That is from MLSE CEO Keith Pelly. Now, we do have a statement from Brendan Shanahan. Should I wait on that, or should I get to that now?
No, I think you read it now.
Okay. Following a meeting today, I was informed that I was no longer going to remain president and alternate governor of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I want to thank the board of MLSE for the tremendous support they've shown me over my tenure. Toronto was where I was born and raised, where my family still lives, and being a part of this historic franchise will always be one of the greatest honors of my life. I want to thank the entire Maple Leaf staff for their commitment and hard work over the years. They are second to none in the National Hockey League. I want to thank our alumni for their support and the tremendous work they do at our games and within the community. Many of them were my heroes growing up, and it has been a pleasure to get to know them all on a personal level. I want to thank the fans for their passion and loyalty. Your love for the team inspired me every day. While I am proud of the rebuild we embarked on in 2014, ultimately I came here to win a cup, and we did not. There is nothing more I wanted to deliver to our fans, and my biggest regret is that we could not finish the job. I really enjoyed working with Brad and Craig, and I firmly believe they are excellent in their roles and have done a great job in their time with the team. I also want to thank the players. They are committed and passionate about delivering a championship to this city and will do everything within their power to accomplish that goal. I wish them the very best. Thank you, Brendan.
Now, I know I've been calling for this guy to be fired for like at least 2 years.
Why aren't you dancing?
Because
Where are your dancing shoes, Steven?
Because I don't like revel in these things happening.
Not according to the internet.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. That's okay. They think I'm wrong. I think they're wrong. Oh, now look at us. Texas State.
Well, you'd rather them lose and get your numbers pop anyway.
Let's go. I like when there's no games. It's great for a sports media business.
Yeah.
When there's no games, it's great.
So good. Listen, I've been calling for this for at least a couple years. What I've liked about this sort of retrospective over the last 24 hours, I guess.
It hasn't been.
No, it hasn't even been 24 hours.
No, it came down like 6 yesterday?
Yeah.
When we were prepping for this show, Adam's like, oh, yeah, the news that came down. I'm like, oh, yeah, we haven't done a show about this yet.
It was yesterday.
Yeah, it was literally yesterday. He did some really, really good things, especially towards the beginning of his tenure here. He repaired a lot of relationships with their alumni, and he hammered that. Alumni, and Legends Row.
That statue downstairs, man. People take a ton of pictures.
Yeah, like getting Dave Keon to return to the Leafs. Sundin was a little bit more involved. I think there's still some work to do there.
I mean, Sundin wasn't at... I mentioned... So I made a video today. It's not out yet, but it's going to be my 5 favorite things that Brendan Shanahan did with the Leafs. And one of them, I mentioned the alumni, but remember that Matt Sundin was not at the alumni thing. Thomas Caberlet was in his place. Do you remember that?
When was this?
This is the 100-year celebration. Mats wasn't there.
Yeah. There's
There's
damage
still
there.
repair. There's still
Yeah.
stuff to repair.
There's damage there, and he did a lot of really good work with that. They were in a brutal place. Obviously, when you're bad, you get to pick high, and you need some luck. The Leafs got a ton of it. William Nylander the fact he was available at 8th overall is insane, because the Canucks picked Jake Virtanen 6th, and the Hurricanes picked Hayden Fleury 7th. That Nylander falls into your lap. Awesome. Great. So you pick him. Marner is available at 4, which...
You also happen to have the current owner of the team, of the London Knights, working for you at that point too, which
Yes,
gives you a
he
bit of an
did.
inside track on if this guy is good or not.
But that draft was McDavid,
Yeah.
Eichel, and then it went McDavid's teammate, Dylan Strome,
Yep.
and Mitch Marner. Dylan Strome has turned into a very good player.
He's not Mitch Marner.
It's taken him a long time. He's never been Mitch Marner. Like in his pro career, again, he's done some very good things. Who knows? He could win a cup next year. We don't know. But in his pro career, he's never been Mitch. So there's a high pick, and there's still some luck involved. And then you win a lottery, and it's Austin.
And they
Matthews.
planned to win that lottery, by the way.
Oh, they sure did. And they threaded the needle. We're going to get Mike Babcock. They got some pretty good goaltending that year from Reimer. They traded him right in the nick of time. And they finish last by the skin of their teeth, and they're one of the best last place teams ever. And you still have to win a lottery. And second overall pick that year was going to be Laine no matter what. Can you imagine the fortunes of this team and how fortunes is maybe aggressive. Can you imagine if they didn't get Austin Matthews?
Right.
So a lot of things go their way. They changed the logo, which I didn't even realize how badly they needed it.
You look at those jerseys now, like Willie in his rookie year.
Oh,
terrible.
It looks disgusting.
I do want to say that in the same year, William Nylander and Dion Phaneuf played on the Leafs.
And Phil Kessel. There's a picture of Nylander and Kessel. I think it was a preseason game.
Crazy.
It's weird to look at. It's really weird to look at. You forget how long Shanahan's been here. He was hired to the Leafs a month after I moved to Oshawa.
And he extended Randy Carlyle. People forget that.
That was like one of the first things he did, and he almost extended Dave Bolland. I've heard he was very close there, and he wanted him bad. And that contract was...
In that case, the Panthers saved us.
Yes, in that case. And they said, don't worry, that bill's going to come due. And it certainly has. He did a lot of good things. There's a reason why we were all thumping, for the Shanna plan.
Brought respectability back.
Yes.
Remember he suspended Nazem Kadri for showing up late to practice? Like, there's going to be standards here.
Yeah, and even if that wasn't directly his decision, he brought in Mike Babcock when he was hired. Like, obviously he's persona non grata now, but when he was hired, that was fortune beyond any Leaf fan's wildest dreams. Lou Lamoriello joining the Toronto Maple Leafs still seems like a fever dream.
I remember getting the notification on my phone and going, what?
I was on the train. I was on the train heading to Smash Fest, the table tennis tournament.
Dominic Moore's table tennis? Yeah.
Dominic Moore's thing. And there's a ton of hockey media that go to that every year, and we're all just looking at each other like, what the fuck? Lou Lamoriello's the Leafs GM? What the fuck is this? Like, I found out he was Leafs GM before I found out he quit the Devils.
Yeah.
Like, that all happened very fast. Shanahan got so much stuff done. It was impossible to not think of him as the guy. And what buried him was this team that he built, and this team that he was confident in, and this team that a lot of people were confident in. As people lost confidence in the team, in the core, and as circumstances changed, the world stopped, the cap stopped going up, he and everyone he employed and was the superior of refused to change. You had so many different opportunities to try to move off of this core, and they wouldn't do it, and they're going to grow into it. And people had the audacity to be like, well, Yzerman didn't win until X year or whatever year.
Almost became a senator.
Yeah, like trying to trick us into the idea that those Red Wings were anything like these Leafs.
I bought that.
Yeah,
I bought that.
We did
I thought
for a
CJ,
while.
CJ on this Chris Johnson show did a fantastic job spelling out like his Brendan Shanahan's thinking behind those Detroit Red Wings and how the Toronto Maple Leafs of 2025, the reason that they're unsuccessful right now is because of the 96-97 Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah.
Where Brendan Shanahan was on that team in that organization and Steve Yzerman was drafted in 85, 86.
Yep.
And they didn't win the cup. It's
Might have been even before that.
drafted before that, played his rookie season in 85, 86. So we're talking about his rookie season to when they win the cup in 96, 97. That's a long time to keep believing in the core.
He was drafted in 1983.
Yeah, and his
Yeah.
rookie season's 84, 88.
No, it was 83, 84.
83, 84? Okay.
With Detroit, 39 goals, 87 points.
So the Detroit Red Wings say, we have this player, we have this nucleus of guys, we're going to keep running it back until it works. And Brendan Shanahan lived through that and was like, you can't just give up on talented players. And he saw Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and William Nylander and John Tavares as the same nucleus as a championship team that they had in Detroit. And him living that experience and being successful is the reason he doesn't have a job today.
And the one thing, Jesse, I want to add to that, first off, Bars. Second,
Yes.
What's interesting about that is he ignores the biggest part of what made those Detroit Red Wings successful.
No salary cap?
No, him. Detroit traded Paul Coffey, a young Keith Primo who hadn't performed in the playoffs.
Wasn't he like a first overall pick?
And a first-round pick to the Hartford Whalers for Shanny and a guy named Brian Glynn. Probably a distant relative.
Brian Glynn. I'm still trying to find a Brian Glynn jersey.
Paul Coffey, Hall of Fame defenseman, was still performing at that point. He'd also won 2 cups. He won 4 with Edmonton, 4 or 5 with Edmonton, and then
was
2
Paul
more.
Coffey.
2 more with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Right? Keith Primo was their young stud centerman who was a monster and a first round pick, guys. And they bring in Shanny. That's trading from the core. And he ignored that part of it. And that's the part where, and I got to give Anthony Petrelli a huge shout. He did a killer article yesterday, and he talked about in it, he's like, Shanahan came in.
He does very good work.
And was this cutting edge guy, willing to try things, take chances on young guys like Dubas. All right, this hasn't worked. We got
That
to
was
try
another
something
great
new.
move
And
at
then
the
what
time.
and then he says, or was it Down Goes Brown that wrote this? Both of them had great articles yesterday. And basically what I think Down Goes Brown said was at the back half, so the first 5 or 6 years, he's cutting edge. He's willing to take risks. The second 5 or 6 years, he becomes the antithesis of what he was when he came in. He was afraid to make moves. He was afraid to fire Keefe after the Montreal series. He was afraid to trade off the roster after the Montreal series. That series, in retrospect, should have been a bigger than we gave it credit
But
for.
If
No,
it's
that's
not
such a-
that one, it's the next year with Tampa.
That's such a good point because we forget that Brendan Shanahan was the president of the front office that was regarded as a bunch of calculator boys.
Yes.
He was not the old guard that was just like, we got to tough out this hockey and do everything. He went away against the grain in every regard and built his front office with a capologist in Pridham who built the CBA.
was a great mix.
And then brought in Dubas who had no
And
experience
Hunter.
but was like a smart nerd.
Yeah.
And Brendan Shanahan built that, and that was his first half of his tenure, and then the back half is just unsuccessful hockey.
And not only that, Jesse, before that, he revolutionized NHL player safety. He brought videos. Remember? Videos and social media. Oh, my
He
God.
was probably the last guy who was any good at that job.
I agree with that completely.
He was criticized for suspending guys too much. And so you roll it back, and now it's just, I don't know, whoever elbows the most people in the head wins. Like whoever concusses the most players wins.
Yep.
Every year.
So you look at on balance what he was able to do. And this is what I'll say in my video a little bit, but when he came in, we were begging for just give me a playoff game. Now
Yes.
we're begging for just give me a shot at the cup. So that bar has been lifted, but what was clear is they got to a certain point and he became, as we all do, afraid to lose it all. I don't want to make the mistake where we go for it and it turns out to be the wrong decision, it's easier to do nothing and hope. And that's where and Keith Pelly mentioned it, or it was mentioned to Keith Pelly, and he acknowledged it in the press conference today, where you get fans after this many years of this throwing beer and jerseys on the ice. And, we'll get to all that. But I think that is how his career needs to be viewed. It's the first half where he revolutionizes this team. That 100-year celebration was really special. Them making the playoffs that year was really special. And anybody who tells me, them making the playoffs that year really set them back, I'm like, you guys are wrong. What they did not do, is they were not ruthless with their free agents who were walking. Your Gardners, your Van Riemsdykes, your Bozaks. You need
your Marners.
Well, your Marners.
Hyman.
You needed to trade off the roster. You needed to, hey, we got a year left with this guy. He's at the peak of his value. We're going to create this new phrase. It's called an own rental. And we're going to try to sell that, which if they had acknowledged, hey, listen, the first 2 or 3 years of these guys making the playoffs, it's house money, and they traded Van Riemsdyk and they traded Bozak with a year to go on their deals, they'd have had a lot more assets to work with.
But the underlying ethos of the regime, now that we have the ability to look back on it, is all of those guys you named and all of the big stars, they believe in their guys.
Yes.
It's not even just the Matthews and Marners and Nylanders. It's the JVR Bozaks and Hymans of the world, where we're not going to trade them at the deadline because we want them for this last couple months of the season.
And the Hyman one is especially egregious. So, I'm going back. His last 3 seasons with the Leafs, 21 goals, 41 points in 71 games. Then 21 goals, 16 assists, 37 points in just 51 games. So you're talking about a player that's probably
he went from an 06 to an 08-09 points per game.
It's like a 55, 60, 65 maybe point player. Then 15 goals, 18 assists, 33 points in 43 games. So now we're talking about like a 65, 70 point player. And he was rumored to be getting something in the 5 to 5.5 range. And the reason he's not still in Toronto is that was too rich for their blood.
Yeah.
Because they'd spent too much money already.
Now, at the time,
the cap was flat.
Well, the cap was flat, and I'm not going to lie to you. And I was like, damn, that's a lot for Zach Hyman for this team. In retrospect, that was a perfectly reasonable contract for this player, but they couldn't afford it because they refused to move off of the big 4 dudes.
Jonas Siegel made a really good point about that too, and he put it in a perspective that I hadn't thought of, where Lou Lamoriello's ethos has always been, if you have time, use it. And so Mitch Marner's camp, and we knew this, they were willing to do 8/8 with a year to go, like pre-John Tavares, which would have seemed crazy at the time.
Yeah, on the OG contract.
Yes, on the OG. So when he was after the second year of his ELC, if the Leafs had gone 8x8 with him, they would have signed. So instead of an $11 million player, you got an $8 million player. Contract would have expired a year ago, but
it would
all
have
the
completely changed how
everything went. And you wouldn't have the negotiating through the media thing.
Nope.
And then also they don't have Matthews done, and they also don't have Nylander done.
Right.
And so they go and they sign Tavares the same summer they got to get Nylander done. And Shanny comes out and he goes, well, we all had to accept less in Detroit. No, you didn't. You had no salary cap. But we accepted less to play together. Okay.
Sorry. Listen, coming out of the 04-05 lockout, everyone who wasn't me had to accept less.
Yeah. That's essentially what happened.
Well,
So what did Shanahan do during that? What was it, 94 lockout?
No, it was the 04 lockout. He crossed the picket line.
That's when he walked over.
Yeah. He along with I think it was there's some pretty significant names who are like heroes of that generation who walked out on their own union.
Oh, Steve, is that what you're referring to? Should we maybe just explicitly say it?
And also,
the reason you even have an ELC now is because of guys like him.
Saying, hey, well, we all took less and we won. I'm sorry, is that not turning the screws against your own player? Is that not you weaponizing the media? Is that not weaponizing the fans against your own guys? And I bet they love playing for him.
Like, come on.
It's not good.